name is Sarah, and if you glanced at my life from the outside, you might think I had everything figured out. I was 36, married to Amir for 12 years, with 2 children who filled our house with the kind of noise that reminded me I wasn't alone. We lived in a neat, sunlit home in the suburbs, a house that smelled faintly of fresh paint and carefully managed expectations. But the truth? The truth lived in the quiet spaces, in the pauses at dinner when Amir's eyes never left his phone, in the long stretches of silence that stretched between us like unspoken accusations. He wasn't cruel, nor was he neglectful in a way you could point to and name. Instead, he was absent, present in body, absent in spirit. He gave everything to his work and left the rest of us surviving on the scraps of his attention. I told myself I was fine. I told myself this was marriage, that love matures into routine, that passion naturally fades. But every time I caught my reflection in the mirror, hair tied back hastily, smile just a little too forced, I wondered when I had stopped being a woman and become only a wife, only a mother, only invisible. It was on one of those ordinary afternoons, when the loneliness pressed just a little heavier, that the doorbell rang. I had ordered groceries, nothing more. I expected a hurried exchange with the delivery man, a mumbled thank you, and a door closed against the world. Instead, I opened it to Zayan. He looked younger than me, late 20s. Maybe, damp hair clinging to his forehead, a uniform shirt wrinkled from the day's work. His eyes were kind, steady, and when they met mine, I felt something stir, like the faintest crack in a window sealed too long. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice warm, apologetic without being rehearsed. "It's fine," I replied, though the simple words carried a weight I couldn't explain. As he handed me the bags, his fingers brushed against mine. The touch was accidental, fleeting, but it sent a ripple through me, startling in its simplicity, terrifying in its implication. It should have ended there. A moment dismissed, a door closed, but I lingered. For reasons I couldn't yet name, I held his gaze a heartbeat longer than necessary. When he left, the house felt different. Not louder, not busier, but alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. I set the groceries on the counter, but my hands trembled slightly, betraying the truth I wasn't ready to say aloud. That day, nothing extraordinary happened. No declarations, no secrets shared. And yet, as I stood in my kitchen surrounded by bags of fruit and bread, I realized something had shifted. A delivery had been made. But what had truly arrived at my door was possibility. After that first encounter, I told myself it was nothing. A simple delivery, a fleeting spark. But denial is a fragile wall, and each day that followed chipped away at it. Zayan kept coming back. At first it seemed coincidental. He happened to be the one assigned my route. Yet every time the bell rang and I opened the door to find his familiar smile, something inside me leapt in recognition. Our conversations began with politeness. "How are the kids?" he'd ask, or a busy day. Small talk, harmless and easy, but there was a gentleness in the way he spoke, an attentiveness I had almost forgotten existed. He listened. He laughed. He noticed details, like how I always tucked my hair behind my ear when nervous, or how my eyes drifted toward the clock when I felt restless. It unsettled me, this sense of being seen. Amir hadn't looked at me like that in years. His glances skimmed over me the way one skims a newspaper headline, familiar but uninvested. With Zayan, every glance felt deliberate, like I was not only visible, but central. One afternoon, as he handed me a bag heavier than usual, I winced slightly under the weight. "Careful," he said, his hand steadying mine. "You don't have to carry it all alone." The words were casual, but they landed with unexpected force. Wasn't that what I had been doing all these years? Carrying everything alone? The household, the children, the silence that grew in the spaces where Amir's presence should have been. That night I lay awake beside my husband, listening to his even breathing as he drifted in a sleep I couldn't reach. I thought of Zayan's words, his steady hands, the warmth of his gaze. Guilt burned through me, but beneath it flickered something else, something dangerously close to hope. Days turned into weeks. Each delivery became less about groceries and more about the unspoken current between us. A brush of hands, a lingering smile, the pause before goodbye that neither of us wanted to end. I told myself it was still harmless, that no lines had been crossed. But deep down, I knew a line was waiting for us, sharp and inevitable. One evening, as the sky darkened and rain tapped against the windows, he arrived again. His hair was damp, his shirt clinging to his shoulders, his smile softer than usual. "You should come inside, at least until the rain eases," I said before I could stop myself. The invitation hung in the air, heavier than the storm outside. He hesitated, his eyes searching mine, not for permission, but for truth. And in that heartbeat of silence, I realized we had already crossed the line. The night he stepped inside felt different from all the others. The rain had soaked his clothes, and droplets clung to his hair, sliding down his forehead in glistening lines. I handed him a towel, my hands trembling though I tried to steady them. "You'll catch a cold," I murmured, my voice quieter than I intended. He smiled faintly, rubbing the towel across his hair. "I've been through worse." But it wasn't the rain or the weather we were both thinking about. It was the silence between us, thick with things neither of us dared to say. I offered him tea to justify his presence, to disguise the truth of why I wanted him to stay. As the kettle hissed, I found myself hyper-aware of his every movement. The way he stood at the edge of the kitchen, respectful, hesitant, yet impossibly present. "You don't have to feel guilty," he said suddenly. His voice low but steady. My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "I can see it in your eyes. Every time I come here, every time we talk, you want to push me away, but you don't." His gaze locked onto mine. "And I don't either." The words cut through the air, simple and devastating. I had spent weeks pretending it was all in my imagination, that I was reading too much into fleeting moments. But here it was, spoken aloud, undeniable. I turned away, gripping the edge of the counter. "I'm married, Zayn. I have a family. Whatever this is, it's wrong." He stepped closer, careful not to bridge the space completely. "I know, and I don't want to ruin your life. But you deserve more than silence. You deserve to be seen." The sincerity in his tone unraveled something inside me. Tears pricked my eyes before I could stop them. For years I had buried that ache, convinced myself it was selfish to want more than duty and routine. And here was this man, younger, freer, speaking the truth I had been too afraid to admit. When he reached out, his hand hovered, waiting for my choice. It was such a small gesture, yet it felt monumental. A single step could shatter everything, or it could breathe life back into a heart that had been quietly dying. I didn't take his hand. Not yet, but I didn't send him away either. The tea sat forgotten on the counter, steam curling upward like a secret that refused to stay hidden. That night, when he finally left, the house felt emptier than it ever had before. Amir's absence was nothing new, but now it was unbearable. Because for the first time in years, I knew what it meant to be wanted. And I knew the storm inside me had only just begun. The next time he came, there was no storm outside, only inside me. The evening was still, the sky fading into a dusky violet, and the house was empty. Amir was caught up in yet another late meeting, the children at my mother's. It should have been a night like countless others, swallowed by silence. Instead, it became the night everything changed. Zayan wasn't carrying bags this time. He stood at the doorway with an uncertain smile, as though searching for an excuse to justify his presence. "I was nearby," he said softly. "I wanted to see you." The words were simple, but they unraveled me. For years, no one had wanted me, not in the quiet, intentional way he did. My breath caught, and before reason could surface, I stepped aside to let him in. The moment the door closed, the air shifted. We stood facing each other, neither moving, both aware of the line we had drawn and the one we were about to cross. "This is wrong," I whispered, though my voice lacked conviction. He didn't argue. He only nodded, his eyes searching mine. "Say the word and I'll leave. But if you don't..." His paws hung heavy, dangerous. Then you already know what this is. Every beat of my heart screamed for caution, but loneliness is a hunger that logic cannot feed. I had starved too long. When his hand reached for mine, I didn't resist. The warmth of his palm, the steadiness of his grip, sent a shiver racing through me, and when his lips finally found mine, the years of emptiness shattered like glass. It wasn't just desire, it was release. It was defiance against the quiet erosion of myself. It was every unspoken need surging to the surface all at once. Hours blurred. The house that had felt lifeless for so long became a place of fire and confession. For the first time in years, I wasn't a ghost haunting my own life. I was alive, burning, seen. But when it ended, the weight of reality settled heavy on my chest. I sat beside him in the dim light, his fingers brushing mine, and whispered the question that clawed at me. What have I done? Zion looked at me with that same quiet honesty that had undone me from the beginning. You remembered you're human, he said. The words were meant as comfort, but they struck deeper. Because being human also meant being flawed, being guilty, being torn between what I owed and what I craved. When he finally left, the silence returned. But it was no longer the same. It wasn't empty anymore. It was full of the truth I couldn't escape. I had crossed the line, and nothing would ever be the same again. In the days that followed, life appeared unchanged to anyone looking in from the outside. Amir still came home late, loosening his tie with the same weary sigh. The children still filled the evenings with their laughter and arguments, the house echoing with a kind of noise that masked the quiet ache underneath. On the surface, everything was as it had always been. But I was not the same. I carried the memory of that night with Zion like a hidden flame, too dangerous to show, yet impossible to extinguish. Every glance at the door where he once stood, every brush of my hand against the counter where he leaned, reminded me of what I had allowed myself to feel. Guilt shadowed me in ways I hadn't anticipated. It slipped into the silence between Amir and me, sharp and accusing. I found myself studying his face when he wasn't looking, wondering if he could see it in me, that I had crossed a line, that I had chosen something, someone, over the life we had built. But if he noticed, he said nothing. Perhaps he was too consumed by his own world, or perhaps he preferred the illusion of stability over the risk of asking questions. And yet, alongside the guilt lived something else, awakening. I could no longer pretend I was satisfied with a life of absence, of half-hearted conversations and hollow smiles. Zayn had reminded me that I was still capable of desire, of being seen, of being wanted. That truth frightened me, but it also made me feel more alive than I had in years. Did I love him? No, or at least not in the way one builds a life around. What I felt was sharper, more immediate, not love, but recognition. He had stepped into the emptiness of my marriage and shown me a reflection of myself I had almost forgotten existed. For that, I knew I would always remember him, but remembering also meant carrying the weight of what I had done. I had betrayed vows, deceived a man who trusted me, even if that trust had grown careless over time. I had tasted freedom, but at a cost that could never truly be repaid. Sometimes, late at night, I lie awake listening to Amir's steady breathing, and I wonder what would happen if I told him. Would it shatter him? Would it set us free? Or would it simply confirm what we both already know, that somewhere along the way, we lost each other, and neither of us noticed until it was too late? The future remains uncertain, but one truth is clear. The delivery was never about groceries. It was about change, about awakening, about the painful reminder that even in the most ordinary lives, extraordinary choices lie waiting at the door. And as much as I wish I could undo it, I know I never will, because in that moment, I wasn't just a wife or a mother. I was me.